Hi and welcome back to Guessagaingaming. For anyone who's watched any amount of videos I've done on this channel over any amount of time, you'll know that occasionally I'll drop into a game that I'm not really covering. Usually it's a AAA game, which I don't generally cover on this channel at all, except for Watch Dogs Legion, but that's the reason I started the channel in the first place. So apart from Watch Dogs Legion, I don't really do videos on AAA games. But occasionally I'll drop into one that I've played just to make a few observations. They're usually pretty short. And here is one of those videos. Today I'm going to have a very short video, not talking about the gameplay of or anything like that, of Far Cry 4, which is a game I've played a bit, or quite a lot. So you can see there all the areas that I've captured, the outpost and the bits and pieces. So it's been quite a time, quite a lot of hours I've put into this game. I've captured quite a bit of this area of the map, all my little orange waypoints. And I'm going to make a few observations, not based on the technicalities of the game or the usual obvious things, because there's no point, because I'm not covering the game as a proper video anyway. I'm not going to talk about any of the things that may be good or bad about the general layout of the game or anything. There's good and bad in all games. The look of the game is actually nice. There is that annoying thing where if you shoot one enemy in a base or get discovered, they all know you're there, which is kind of ridiculous, but okay, it's what it is. But the thing I want to talk about with this game is really only one thing, because usually I only make these videos about AAA games if there's one particular overriding theme that I find like stupid or ridiculous. And with Far Cry 4, it's very simple, which is that the overriding story is ridiculous and stupid. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is. And the reason it is because the story, which could have been, like many movies actually, it's not that difficult to make a believable story, and instead it's ridiculous. So, and it's not the actual gameplay or the ongoing part of it. What it is the actual premise is ridiculous. So if you haven't played this or you don't really know about it, what it is you're there in this country you've not really been to where your parents are from, to scatter your mother's ashes as her dying wishes, which is very nice and commendable, and there's nothing wrong with that as a premise to why you go to a country. Also, your father was part of the resistance there, so he's a well-known figure. Again, nothing wrong with that. But the next part, which is the ridiculous part, is you then get caught up with the rebels. These two factions, it doesn't really matter, that's not what this video is about. There's a guy and his sister, they both have different views, sometimes they're pretty polar opposite, and you have to do missions for each one, and you can pick which one you kind of believe in. And there's a very interesting bad guy in this called Pagan Min. He's very good, he's very well done. He's not in the game enough actually, but that's another video for another time for somebody else. But the premise is silly, because you come here to scatter your mum's ashes. By the nature of what that is, you're obviously going to be kind of emotional about that. And then out of that, both these two siblings, who both have their own organisations, they've been in the country, they have a network, they have armies. Okay, they're fighting a bigger army of the dictator Pagan Min, but they both have their forces, and they have numerous soldiers and forces. Then ask you to do missions on your own. And I'll pause there because you can consider how ridiculous that statement is. You're not from this country. It doesn't matter whether your father was well known or your mother was from this country, and that doesn't matter. You're not a soldier particularly. You're not Snake from Metal Gear or The Witcher or Spider-Man. You've got no specific skill that would give you a heads up on doing missions. And even if you did, why would they send a person on their own when they have their own army? At the very least, what they would do is they would send you with their army and the backup. I know there's missions where you can call a few rebels as backup, but why would you be going on your own in the first place? It makes no sense. And that's nowhere near to say that games where you're on your own don't make sense. For example, in The Witcher, that makes sense. You're The Witcher, you're on your own. Spider-Man, you're Spider-Man. In Metal Gear, you're Snake and you're on your own and you're doing missions. Okay, even in that, it's a little bit like, why would you go on your own when you've got an army? But he's a very, very highly skilled mercenary. So it kind of is believable that he might go on his own. But in this game, I'm just going to kill this guy. It doesn't make any sense why you would die, you rebels. So it doesn't make any sense why they would send you, because you would be completely inequipped to deal with missions fighting, those two people, for a guy that's just come to a country who's bringing his mother's ashes, who's not particularly experienced in any form of military combat and doesn't know the layout of the land, would be difficult. Shooting two guys would be a difficult thing. And they're asking you to go and do whole missions, take over bases, take over outposts, So it makes no sense. And as I said, in some games you're a skilled person and that makes sense. In other games, Cyberpunk is one where you're you start off as a regular guy and you build up through your own decisions to do more combat. Okay, you might, because if you're V in Cyberpunk, it's quite believable that you start off just doing small jobs and then you might escalate, and that's your choice. No one's asking you to do that. I mean, I know people ask you to do jobs, but it's your choice to take them. You start off small. It's not some big organisation asking you at the beginning, and the whole story makes sense to how he got involved. Even in Far Cry 5, where in both the main story, where I won't put too many spoilers in this, but when you're in a plane crash, and this is just a setup for the game, you're like the rookie and you end up stuck in this area where the Seed family are in control. That makes sense. You're in a plane crash, you would need to survive. Okay, some of the other things you might do might be like, okay, but the beginning setup makes sense. You're stuck there and you are a law enforcement person. It's your job. You're with the marshal. In Far Cry New Dawn, you're the survivor of a military kind of group that are helping people in the new world after the Seed's actions, let's just say that. Again, that makes sense. So you'd end up at an outpost, you're the only survivor, you would go and help. You may well go and help with that outpost's daughter, who's already versed with survival in the area and understands the layout. So those scenarios make sense. But the scenario in this game is just so dumb, and it's really hard to get past it, because it would be such a simple thing to make it believable. Okay, so you're in this country and actually you've got a sibling who's being held captive by these people, so that's your reason to get involved. Maybe your dad's not dead and maybe he is involved and you join his army. Maybe you need to get across the country to escape, and that will be part of your motivation to join up and kind of get across the country to the only airport. That would kind of make sense. But you wouldn't decide on your own back, I'm going to go and take over outposts, apart from anything else. If you're a layman and you've just come to a country, why would you feel comfortable killing anyone, let alone knowing which faction's right or wrong? And you wouldn't have the ability. And plus, even if you really, really wanted to do that, why would they ask you? It would be insanity for two rebel factions to ask a unknown person to them, just because you're related to somebody who was a big shot there, doesn't mean that you'd be a decent person, and they would know that, or that you'd be any good at the missions. And so why would they send a person on their own, without any supervision or any backup, to do these missions when you could betray them, which you kind of have the option to do when you take different missions for each one, or you could fail because they've not sent you any reinforcements or any army. It absolutely makes no sense from any angle. And that's annoying and silly, because you're aware, and I was very aware when I played this, I hadn't played the other Far Cry games earlier, so I can't comment on them, but I was very aware while I was playing this that the idea is silly. I'm used to playing open world RPGs. It doesn't matter. Dragon Age makes sense for what it is. You're the chosen one because you've got the rift in your hand, but it makes sense why you'd be if you follow the game theory, why you'd be doing it, because you're the chosen one and you do go with a party of 4 people, and as I already said, Cyberpunk and all these other games make sense. They have a reason why you're doing it, and why you would be alone, or why you start off small, and what your motivation for doing would be. But in this, you wouldn't have a motivation, because you wouldn't just go out in another country you don't know and randomly go out and start killing people for 2 different factions that you're not really familiar with, and just killing people, because, unless you're a maniac, you wouldn't feel like killing one person. And again, to do it on your own, why wouldn't you say to them, well, hello, where's my backup? Where's my army? Why aren't you sending your forces with me? So every part of the setup is silly, and the more I got into this, and the more I was running around taking over outposts and doing these kind of things, which again are normal missions in games. I'm not knocking or promoting or saying it's good or bad, the Ubisoft kind of way of having these outposts and regions, and that I'm not knocking that. In Far Cry New Dawn, that works because of, like I said, the premise is that you're the only survivor of a train wreck, and you're hanging out with the people that you've met because you would need to. So that makes sense to what it is, because you'd have to survive and join the people around you and help them, because that would help yourself. But in this, it makes no sense. And the more I played it, the more I felt like this is like idiotic. I'm running around taking over outposts, taking over all manner of things on my own for causes that I had no awareness of before I came there. 2 different people spouting different ideas, and I'm kind of half the time doing things for one and doing things for another, so I don't really believe in either. And it doesn't make any sense, and it also doesn't make sense how you would do it. I know in the game it makes sense because you shoot them and they die, but it wouldn't make any sense that you would be able to take over outposts or bases or anything as a person without much military training that's just turned up in a country you don't know on your own. So that's my thought on this. As far as the rest of the game, it's it is what it is. If you've played the Far Cry games, and I've only played Far Cry 5 and New Dawn apart from this one, the gameplay's fine, the world looks nice, the characters are interesting in general, but this game is just, the premise is dumb. And I think when you start with a really dumb premise that doesn't make any sense, however you twist it round, it spoils the game, because at the beginning you accept, like, okay, I'm going to go and do that mission, I don't know why, I'm just going to do it. That's lots of games, you just end up doing what they tell you straight away. But the more you're going around doing this endless conquering of outposts and areas for these 2 different factions that you had no interest in before you got there, and you're doing it on your own, the more you think, So that's kind of my thought on Far Cry 4. It's not a critique of the gameplay, it's not a critique of anyone playing it. It's just that, when you think about it, the premise is silly. And, like I've said, I've listed games where they have very similar things you do in games. You run around taking over outposts, you run around attacking different factions, you run around building up your reputation, but the premise isn't silly, and the premise in this is just silly. Anyway, that's my thought on Far Cry 4. Thanks for watching from Guessagaingaming, and take care.